This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Today's episode of the Motor City Sports Rant is brought to you by The Athletic, premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Listeners of this podcast can save 30% off the first year of an annual subscription by going and visiting theathletic.com/DSP. Don't miss out on a great Detroit sports website. They got writers covering all major Detroit sports events, and they even got writers now covering college events. They hired writers to cover Michigan and Michigan State this fall. All the staff here, we read The Athletic each and every day, and you can become one of the subscribers by going and visiting theathletic.com/DSP.
Detroit is the greatest! Straight up light you on fire for a Coney dog right now.
Takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the Motor City Sports Rant on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Jason will be joining me a little bit later on via telephone. Oh my goodness, what a week the Detroit Sports Podcast Network had. Thanks to everybody's support, we were able to finally break through, and I was the first to cover the Detroit Tigers. I earned the credential. I emailed the PR staff of the Detroit Tigers. It had been a minute since anyone had replied, and finally, just sending over some basic information, they said, okay, go ahead, you're now in the system. We have had access to like game notes and things like that, press releases and information regarding the pro teams, but the Detroit Tigers, thank them. They were the first to take a chance on a podcast, take a chance on me, and we're forever grateful because it's opened the door for a lot of opportunities for the podcast to do a bunch of different things, and the experience was great. I was a little bit nervous, not going to lie, getting into the gate, trying to figure out, okay, do I make sure I go into the right parking lot, make sure I get into the press area the right way, getting my way around, but it was great because a couple of people who I had previous relationships with were there at the game, and they showed me around, showed me the press area, showed me where people got food, showed me where the clubhouse is, kind of the lay of the land, because it's a little bit different than when you're a fan and you're just kind of walking around and you're seeing it from the vantage point of what section. The press area is quite large, and it's all-encompassing. I didn't know that all the radio broadcast, road, and the home team all broadcast from the same area, so you could listen to the broadcast of the Cleveland Indians from the press area. It was very interesting and unique to see. The Tigers, unfortunately, did not win the first contest that I got to go cover, but it was a very fun experience. It was a Friday night. The Cleveland Indians played really well. It was a situation in which, when you look back at it, the Tigers only won one of the three games, but I had an opportunity to kind of, at least for the first time, kind of see how the operation went. I did get a chance to write an article, and the buzz for the weekend really was everybody asking and talking about Alan Trammell, Jack Morris, them earning their spot in the Hall of Fame, and I look forward to talking to Jason about that. So it was a great experience all around. Thanks to everyone's support. We were able to take this network from where we started all the way to an outlet now that's in the mix with the pro teams as well. We started our coverage at the college level, worked our way up, and now our experience will take us to the Detroit Tigers and hopefully beyond. More of the pro teams, I do think, are recognizing, okay, this podcast thing is not going away. It's something that a lot of people are doing, but I think what allows us to be a step above is the fact, really, that we got a nice following, that we do broadcast out of a professional office. The majority of the staff here are compensated for the work that they do. Now, are they compensated at the level that they want? Heck, I set up a great system in that the more work you do, the bigger your following, you can earn a great amount of cash. And I think that's a great setup. Why give anybody money for not doing anything? I mean, if you do a podcast once a month, why should you be compensated for it? So I think it's great that I set up a good system in that if the guys want to do it, guys like Vito, Jason, Adam, they want to work hard, bust their butt, earn sponsors, then there's an opportunity to do great things with the podcast. And so it's great to be able to broadcast on a daily basis. And thanks to everybody's support, we did it. We were able to go out there and kind of make our case that there's now opportunities for the network to do bigger and better things. And I look forward to it. I mean, I guess every so often I tell people, when you make goals, you got to keep making more. And that's the opportunity that we are now presented. We can make more goals in terms of coverage, in terms of what we're able to do, in terms of things going on at the network. And as advertised, Jason dialed in. What's up, my friend? I'm just recapping the fact that your guy got to cover the Detroit Tigers, man. It was awesome. What's up with you, sir?
Not much, just, wrapping up my workday, and I'm ready to chat a little bit about some Detroit sports with you.
Yeah, first and foremost, man, that was awesome. I was shocked. All of a sudden, periodically I get requests and I get notifications from other podcasts and things like that. Some of them trying to get attention from us, others trying to, say, hey, we like what you're doing. Can you promote us? Things like that. But all of a sudden I seen a podcast from 105.1 The Bounce, and they said Jason Jarvie was on, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to dial this one up. And the great thing about them is they highlighted where you were at, what part of the show you were on, and you went probably to the studio and talked about the network. It was great. How'd that come about?
So normally it's the three guys. It's Jello, Justin, and Vertus. And Jello was actually on vacation for the rest of the week. So they kind of switched it up. They talk about entertainment, sports, and then wrestling. So they brought me in. They knew that I'm a sports guy. So they brought me in to talk about sports. So they said, hey, you can say whatever you want about your podcast. And I had to rep the DSP and share all the great news and hopefully maybe get a couple more listeners.
No, that was great. And the best part was your opening intro was like, well, I'm shocked you guys invited me. What took you guys so long? It was great. And they were like, whoa, they were a little bit floored. It was good, man. It was funny.
I had to keep them on their toes. They're relatively new in the podcast game. So I had to bring it. I had to let them know that this isn't my first rodeo in a podcast.
Exactly. And then the way you told the story of the network, myself, Adam, the work that we did, your role in the network, and now we've been able to break through a little bit and have relationships with some of the pro teams. So it was a good, definitely 10 days for the network. And you know who else had a good 10 days? Alan Trammell, Jack Morris. The weekend really was awesome to see. And the way I was kind of thinking about it was, I know a lot of people wanted Trammell and Morris to get into the Hall of Fame to validate that 1984 team. And I do get it that, similar to us, we want respect. We want to be recognized for the work that we've done. Like, look, we're pioneers. We're a podcast network that earned a pro team credential. Really, in the grand scheme of things, we deserve a lot more attention. But then I started thinking, I'm like, I know with Trammell and Morris, the way that they got in was not the conventional way. And all due respect to them, they're great. They deserve to be in. But do you think it took away that they got in basically kind of like in a back alley way through another committee that was formed that hasn't been typical for guys to get in that way? Do you think it took away from them? Because I kind of am like, with us, I don't, at this point, if people started going, yeah, we're now going to do articles about your podcast and things like that, I'd be like, look, it's too late. I mean, the ship has sailed. We're already here. We've already done our work. We're already making the noise. I don't need that validation anymore. I wanted it at the time, but I kind of parlayed that to Morris and Trammell in that, yeah, it's nice that they got in, but in the way that they got in, does that kind of tarnish it a little bit?
I don't think it takes away that much from them getting in the Hall of Fame. They're still in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Realistically, these are two guys who, based on their statistics and what they did for their team, they really did deserve to be in that Hall of Fame. There's guys who are in there who may have been more popular and may have had a bigger name, but they didn't have the numbers to back up what Trammell and what Jack Morris had. And even if you want to extend it to Lou Whitaker, who he's not a Hall of Famer yet, and that guy probably may even have more of a case than Jack Morris or Alan Trammell. So it's like I think they were supposed to get in, and you kind of see this with like all-star voting, that you vote the big names, the popular guys, when there's always going to be those snubs. And I think Alan Trammell and Jack Morris, those are guys who definitely got snubbed, and they definitely got hurt by being not seen by all the baseball writers. So I don't think it takes away. and I think everyone knows that they're Hall of Famers.
Did you get a chance to watch their speeches from Cooperstown? Did you watch some of the ceremony? I mean, that was a class. When you look at it, Vlad Guerrero, Jim Tomei, you got Morris and Trammell. That was an unbelievable class that went in one of the upper echelon. And I think it said that in terms of attendance, in terms of fans that went out to Cooperstown, it was the second largest attended enshrinement of all time. So it was a great class to watch, give their speeches. It was fun. It was sentimental. I got a chance to watch some of the speeches during work here, and it was nice to see Morris and Trammell give respect to the team, the city of Detroit, the fans, and it was just nice for them to be on the map on the national landscape. Did you get a chance to peek into any of that?
I didn't get a chance to peek in, but that's also it's kind of how I feel about the Tigers. Is growing when I grew up, the Tigers that I knew growing up were the Tigers of the 90s, that they weren't that great of a team. And I didn't get to experience the 1984 World Series and the real good years of Jack Morris and Alan Trammell. So, I didn't really peek in too much. I heard some of the snippets, afterwards, but, I know who they are. I know that they're great Tigers, and that's why they deserve my respect and all of our respect, really.
Yeah, what's your relationship like now with the 1984 team? Because people will say that nationally that team really has been underrated, underappreciated, a team that started off 35 in wins, 5 losses, and they went wire to wire in terms of winning the pennant, getting to the World Series, winning at home versus the Padres, and it was really an all-time team, but I do think that fans of Detroit kind of felt like there was not enough love given to that 84 team with the vast amount of talent that they had, the way they started, wire to wire, and they feel like if the Tigers were like a Lakers team or like the Yankees or a Red Sox, a story team, that they would have been like had documentaries made about them or would have been really talked about. And now with Morris and Trammell and maybe Lou Whitaker in the future getting Hall of Fame nods, it's starting to kind of come to the point now where there's some more recognition to a great team that a lot of people really respected.
I think what the 1984 team would have needed, they really needed to get another championship, like maybe to go back-to-back or just to get another championship under their belt, because, when you win one, a lot of teams do one. Not a lot of teams win multiple championships, and those are the teams that get spoke about. You look at the Pistons and the Bad Boys winning back-to-back titles, 89 and 90, and that's the Bad Boy era is something that's remembered not just in Detroit, but all throughout the NBA world. So you talk about a Detroit Tigers team, yeah, they had a really great season, but that's all they did. In 20 years, are we gonna fondly remember the great years that the Tigers had in the late 2000s and all that success? They're not really going to remember it because they didn't win a World Series.
It was nice to see just some respect given to that team. Now, do you think, because Alan Trammell did reference it and it is being talked about, that when you look at the numbers analytically, Lou Whitaker ranks up there in terms of others that are already in the Hall of Fame? Do you think eventually Lou Whitaker will probably get in similar to the way that Trammell and Jack Morris got in?
If I was a betting man, I would say yeah. If Trammell and Morris can get in, then Whitaker can get in too. And outside of, I don't know the names on all the other Major League Baseball teams of players who have the stats but just maybe didn't have the popularity. Those guys should be honored in some way or another.
Man, when you look back at it, I think it was around 2000 when Lou Whitaker first had his name on the ballot, and there was just a class that was just unbelievable, and that's why he only got like 2% of the vote, and he had to be dropped off right away. You needed 5% just to stay on the ballot, but there were like a list of like maybe a dozen names that were ahead of him that was just unbelievable, and that's why right now Lou Whitaker is not in the Hall of Fame, and that's why Alan Trammell and Jack Morris were put in through a different committee style. So it's interesting. Yeah,
the Hall of Fame voting itself it's just flawed. That why does he need to get like why does he need to hit a certain to stay on the ballot? His name. These guys should be on the ballot at all times. If they're going to get in, they're going to get in at some point. And if they're not going to get in, then they're clearly not going to get voted in. because we've had years where they don't vote anybody into the Hall of Fame. So just leave these guys on, because obviously the guy deserves to be there. So why take away that shot just because he got lumped in with a batch of great players?
Yeah, and similarly, when I was watching it, I was just thinking, man, Morris and Trammell got in this way, and then you have the likes of Terrell Owens, who's looking at the writers and going, I'm offended that I wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm not even going to show up. And Trammell, Whitaker, Morris, they've shown kind of class and respect, but you knew it bothered them. You knew it was on their mind, and every time they talked about it, it was kind of something that was something personal to them. And so for Trammell and Morris, they're now in the Hall of Fame, well-deserved. Whitaker probably next, like you said. But in terms of the voting, that was the system, is that if you are on a ballot and look, the number was low, Jason, 5% of the writers had to vote you in to keep you on the ballot. That's not really a lot of votes. And you can only, I think, vote for like 9 or 10 at the time per class. And like I said, there were legitimately 10 people that were Hall of Famers ahead of Lou Whitaker, and so he got trapped in to a class that was amazing. And that's why he didn't make the list on more than 5% when his time was due to be voted for. But I do think through this new channel of a committee, I do think Whitaker has a strong chance, because really what's helped him and what helped out Morris and Alan Trammell's analytics. Their numbers analytically in terms of WAR, defensive prowess, the way that they played, their impact on the game. When you start looking at the numbers, then you go, wow, their numbers compare. I mean, Lou Whitaker has a higher WAR than several of the athletes that played his position that are already in the Hall of Fame. So it's starting to be looked at, and more people rely on analytics and respect the fact that analytics can be used to evaluate talent. And that's why I do think Lou Whitaker will get his day. And it's unfortunate, because I do think that when you think of Lou Whitaker, you automatically think of Alan Trammell. I mean, everybody thought about it. Even I think Chipper Jones referenced it, that when he was growing up, he definitely was influenced by watching the defensive play of Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker, that story double play combination. It's something that, looking at it from our perspective, we were young when the '84 team came about, but since history, since time has passed, people are really revering, like, wow, Trammell and Whitaker really did some things and put Detroit on the map for the length of time that they played with the Tigers.
Absolutely. And, that's we've been lucky here in Detroit. We've had some dynamic duos. You look at the Pistons, you get Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars. You got Trammell and Lou Whitaker. And, I think it might be too early to say that they're, going to be all-time greats. But you look at the Lions, you got Stafford and Calvin Johnson, even though they may not have been as successful. But those are two guys that were able to hook up and really do some things for the team.
Now, Jason, I want to talk to you about this. Have you had a chance to kind of peek into the news regarding athletes and Twitter? Some more athletes have come out and have been in trouble for racist comments, racist tweets that they had put out there when they were young adolescents. That's one. And two, Des Bryant went off on a Twitter storm when people were kind of like discussing with him, look, you don't have a job, you don't have this, and you don't have that. And he kind of chirped back to a lot of people, especially some analysts at the NFL Network. A lot of these athletes in Twitter, and I put a poll on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, it's trending with a lot of negativity that's coming from athletes in Twitter. I put out a poll on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, and I had asked, and I'll get your opinion on what's happened. Do you think a pro team in the next 2 years will just say, look, we got a policy, and that policy states no athlete can be on Twitter during the season, or no athlete can be on Twitter tweeting while you're employed by our team?
I find it very hard to believe that anything like that would ever come about. Just it's another form of restricting these players, and I hate to get political, but it is. It's freedom of speech. I mean, if these guys want to say all this stuff on Twitter, let them say that. But they also need to know that they're going to be held accountable. It's one thing when we've seen now the past couple of weeks people getting just absolutely burned for something that they may have posted on Twitter years ago. And I mean, I find some of that stuff ridiculous just because people change. You're talking about if somebody posted something when they were legitimately a teenager, it's hard to really. How do you equate that, and how do you punish them now for that type of thing? But you're talking about players now, though, like a guy like Des Bryant who goes off on Twitter and chirps at all of his critics. If he wants to do that, he can do that. But he needs to know that that's also going to be one of the reasons why he's not going to be on an NFL roster to start this season. Teams are going to look at that, and they know that they don't want to deal with this kind of headache, so they'll move on. Even if the second option isn't as good as him, they're going to go with that because they know they aren't going to have to worry about that.
Right, but a lot of people are mentioning, and I think it's true, if one person, and just look back to the NFL draft. You remember the draft where a player was caught that day,
Yep.
that he got caught smoking a bong, and they revealed it the day of the draft. Don't you think from that moment, I really think that bong moment, when that Twitter picture was revealed, do you think that maybe athletes are naive or burying their heads in the sand, not really thinking that, oh my gosh, there are media, and it's weird to think about too, there are media, and we don't do that, but there are media who sit at their computer and are typing in search bad words for these athletes, trying to catch them because that they want to make news on it. They want to be able to reveal, look, I got this guy and I got this situation. There's been now multiple athletes that have been caught with old tweets that have now come back to haunt them. And so I think that right now it's going to happen in the next 6 months. PR staffs, athletes, agents, maybe companies are going to come out and they're going to set up a way to wipe out bad tweets. And I think that for an athlete, I think it's naive to say, look, once you sign a contract and become a professional, you damn better go through your Twitter and make sure that in this age of political correctness, you just wipe out anything that could be remotely dangerous and be very professional with it. I mean, we've been afforded the opportunity to grow via Twitter, but we're the owners, so we can take the hit a little bit if people don't like it. We can block people. People can unfollow us. But when you're massively followed by maybe 10, 15 million people and you're popular and you have all this access, I just think that it's kind of stupid for these athletes to not be aware that there's media looking for the nonsense that you put on Twitter.
I mean, it's absolutely stupid, and it's not just athletes. It's everybody. I mean, the number of times on Facebook or Twitter where I'll see something and I want to burn somebody on Facebook or Twitter, and I'll type everything out. Once I type it all out, I think to myself, what's this going to do for me? This will give me some sort of vindication for a little bit, but in the end, is it really worth it? Is it worth, maybe down the road, if I'm trying to get a job and, somebody happens to find this Twitter post where I went nuts, this could cost me my job and my livelihood. So, it's not just athletes, it's everybody needs to be, it's a new day and age with social media that you can be ruined by Facebook and Twitter. Yeah,
I do think it's hard. And I think, in talking to you now on this edition of Motor City Sports Rant, it's kind of hard if you're, somebody that's not working for yourself and you don't have the opportunity to have an established business, if you're not the entity. I don't know, man. I used to be, really supportive of Twitter, but in this day and age with all the reactions, I get what you should do with it. But I think that strictly, if I was going to advise a professional, if they came and talked to me, I'd say, look, just promote your stuff, promote your appearances. Don't discuss the game. Don't discuss the fans. Really keep it to business. And, have a private Instagram where it's just you and your family and you can share things, but not to the world, because there's just too many people that are looking at it negatively. It's just gotten to the point now they've convinced me that prior to this weekend, I would have said that the pros outweigh the cons. But looking at it, I mean, if you're 17 years old and you're, reciting old rap lyrics and people are coming out and judging you for it when you're 25 years old and, still, not forgiving you for things that you did as a kid and judging you for it, and you could lose your job. I mean, look what happened to James Gunn. You heard the news with him, right? He had already been through that with the tweets. He had already been through it, apologized, and he got fired from a massive Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. He got fired from something he already had apologized for.
Yeah,
but
that's one where that was one where I was just like, it's tough. And the tweets that he had, they were dumb, and they were for shock value. And it just I hate that they don't. There's no way to accommodate for a person changing. So it's a rough situation for anybody dealing with it.
Yeah, and then with Dez Bryant, do you think that by blasting former teammates, blasting Jerry Jones, calling Sean Lee a snake, do you think that puts maybe a stamp on his time in the NFL that maybe if it's not the Browns, he's going to go the way of Terrell Owens, where he just fades off into the sunset? He will never be on a team again, because it just kind of reaffirms what people think, is that this dude's immature, not a good guy, and doesn't know how to conduct himself, even after a situation in which he was released from a team.
I'm not sure if he's completely done. I think he still has value. And like I said in the podcast that I did on the S&E Top 3, I said that, Dez Bryant, he's not going to be on a team to begin the NFL season, but come week 4, come week 5, somebody's going to at least find some way to use him. I mean, you want to know a team who would be interesting? The Patriots. Bill Belichick always seems to give the players who have had kind of a rough go of things and maybe have a checkered past, he gives them a second chance and he uses them, or he just drops them in another 3 weeks. So Dez Bryant will end up somewhere in the NFL this year. I'm not sure if he's going to be relevant or actually have a good season, but he's better than other free agent options out there.
All right, last topic before I let you go. Thank you so much for joining us, Jason Jarvie. You can follow him on Twitter at Jarvie the King. He definitely is a major part of this network, major part of the successes that we've had. You can follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. The free and easy way to support us is to go visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com, and definitely check out, if you're starting a brand new podcast, check out Podomatic.com. They're a great supporter of our fine project. What were your early impressions of camp for the Detroit Lions? I know a couple players, nicks and bruises, LeGarrette Blount, Marvin Jones. It's really interesting. Actually, I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit surprised at just a simple tweet that I put out regarding Marvin Jones getting nicked up. Got massive response, and I had to double back and be like, whoa. I know I kind of hyped it up by putting alert in all caps, but I even underestimated how serious people are regarding following camp. Isn't that crazy?
No, I mean, people have been waiting and dying for the NFL. Any type of news, I know when I saw it, I was like, well, I know he put the serious news on here, but how serious is it actually going to be? So I definitely did my own research after I saw your tweet, because I needed to figure out how serious is this Marvin Jones injury, and are we already going to be hanging our heads for the Lions this year?
Yeah, what were your early impressions of camp? I mean, right now, it's all positive. Everybody's talking about, installing the plays and, looking at pad levels and getting competitiveness. But something that I liked was Matt Patricia and the organization is kind of saying, and revealing some of their tactics, saying that they practice tougher drills and tougher plays toward the end of practice, toward the end of the day, to kind of see how these guys respond when they're dead tired. And he's emphasizing, look, there are going to be moments at the end of the game where you got to perform. You're going to be, not as fresh as you were at the beginning of the game, and your job is to perform, and your job is to go out there and handle your business. And so I do like the way in which Matt Patricia is handling his business and the way in which practice is organized. By all accounts, everybody says that it's upbeat, up-tempo. Everybody's looking like they're involved and invested. And a couple players I'm looking to watch for are Frank Ragnow, the offensive line, and definitely that offense for the Detroit Lions.
Camp this early, it's always going to be positive. So it's nice to see that we've generally stayed healthy outside of LeGarrette Blount and, Ziggy Ansah on the PUP list again. But, who knows how long it'll be this year or if it's just a precaution. So
what was what was your reaction to that? Because Adam was just tripping. He's just like, seriously, again? This is somebody that started this way. It's making him concerned regarding the money that they, allocated for him, franchising him. Adam Strozinski, Jock, said that, he's starting to think that Ziggy might be the worst franchisee of the Lions in their history.
I think we have to give it a little bit of time. We got to see how long is he going to be on the PUP list? If he's on the PUP list the entire preseason and we don't see any type of progress, then I might start getting a little concerned. But I think if we hear that, he is working out, I would rather have Ziggy Ansah for a full 16 games than, some of these practices, he knows what he's doing. And I think Ziggy Ansah, what we really need from him is to get to the quarterback. Only time will really tell if he can do that or if he won't be able to do that in this new system. So I'm not too worried about Ziggy Ansah just yet. If we maybe see a prolonged stay on the PUP list, then I might start pumping the brakes.
In terms of that offense, I'm starting to kind of peek into what that offense could be in terms of their production in 2018. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, by all accounts, if you just look at what they have with Stafford, a running game, an improved offensive line, barring an unforeseen injury, I think that offense really could be a top 15, maybe even borderline top 10 in terms of scoring points. The one thing that I think you and I both saw last year was you don't have to be behind in every game. You can start off games strong, roll out there to a 14-0 lead, play from ahead, and I think that's going to be critical, paramount for the Detroit Lions this year is why lean on Matthew Stafford and all these comebacks? You have this engine, rev it up early. And I understand people will say, look, defenses are playing to Matthew Stafford. They're trying to force him to be one-dimensional. And so with just a semblance of a running game, I do think that this offense can be something where you go, this can be an offense where you start to score points at a really high clip. This offense for the Lions, I'm seeing like, look, come out fast. If they can come out hyped, if they can be productive, there were a lot of drives last year where we were joking around going, okay, what's going to happen? And they marched right down the field and handled their business. I think that this offense is something that could be something of legends and could be an unheralded, underrated group going into 2018. I do think across the board, another year in the system under Cooter, Matthew Stafford growing. You got the deep threat in Marvin Jones, the emergence of Kenny Galladay, the semblance of a running game, and you got emergence at the tight end position. That offense collectively could be very impressive in my eyes.
No, I know that I'm always the optimist for the Lions. I'm always the one who's going to give them a better grade overall. And I've actually had some thoughts over the weekend because we've generally been pretty high on this Lions team. By all means, their offense does look like it has all the tools to be very, very successful. But I'm starting to we talked about getting a little concerned last week. The way that I feel about this offense and the way that you just talk about this offense, about how it could be legendary, it kind of brought back some reminders. And you know what Lions team it actually reminded me of before the season? That would be the 2008 Detroit Lions.
Oh.
Because I remember, and granted, that team, I think we have much better athletes on our team now. But I remember, because me and my brother and some friends, we made the trip down to Atlanta for the opening of the season. And all we were talking about is, Calvin Johnson is just going to be amazing. He's going to be so good. We got Kevin Smith. We got Roy Williams. This offense is going to put up some numbers. And we all know what happened at the end of the 2008 season.
Oh.
So I don't want to – I'm not going into full panic mode. But with the way that, we're talking about the Lions, and then I look at the way that everybody else in the sports world, how they're talking about the NFC North with the Vikings, the Packers, and a Bears team that's looking better. Are we just too close to this team that maybe we're not seeing something?
Ooh, Jason, way to bring the party to a crashing halt. You got some concern, and I'm optimistic. I'm like, look, and here's the thing. I do agree with you in terms of being cautious. The one thing that probably would lean in your favor is that in years past, the way that this offense has been, it's been predictable. It's been one-dimensional. But you've seen that they're making a concerted effort to probably run the ball. And the one thing that is concerning is what happens if that offensive line doesn't produce? What happens if they're inconsistent? What happens if there's an injury? Because the depth is definitely an issue. If LeGarrette Blount is going to be, off and on in terms of his production, can you count on a Theo Riddick? Can you count on others to get the job done? And most people will say no. So, yeah, definitely, I would say that there is room for skepticism and room to be critical of that offense. But I do think it's important for them to play from ahead. That has to be a mantra. I mean, it has to be spreading throughout the locker room. Get this first score. Get the first touchdown. Convert more field goal opportunities into touchdowns. Don't settle. And I do think, though, this year, if I want to make a bold prediction, I do think they'll have more 10-plus point victories than in years past. I do see 3 to 5 opportunities where they could destroy some teams.
And I've said it year in, year out. We're going to just have to wait until week 1, really.
Oh, man, I can't wait. Huh? Early impressions of camp. We talked about the offense. In future weeks, we'll talk about the defense. We'll definitely get into the Matthew Stafford stuff. We'll talk about Matt Patricia and what he's able to bring to the table. And all we got to hope for is that, when these joint practices happen, when the Lions continue to practice every single day, that really the only thing I look for in camps, because yes, it is all positive, nothing really comes of it in terms of really solid information because the media is not really privy to a whole heck of a lot, is just no ACLs, no massive injuries, no one disgruntled, everybody on board, and then probably in the coming weeks we'll have that debate because there is a player on that offense that's going to be looking for some big money, and that's Golden Tate. And we'll talk about that in the coming weeks regarding what his role could be, what his numbers are going to look like, what Marvin Jones is going to do, our expectations for the running game. And so we'll definitely, in future editions, hopefully when Jason's here, have a chance to break it down even further. But that was just an exciting 10-minute preview, man, and I'm getting excited. My juices are pumping, man. Thank you so much.
No problem, man.
What do you got the rest of the week? What do you got going on, sir?
Rest of the week, got more work. I want to give a shout out actually to my niece, Elliot Jarvie. She's on the Grosse Pointe Woods 10U Little League softball team. They went to the state tournament, the state championship tournament this past weekend, and they made it out of the pool play. And today they made it into the Final Four. So congrats to her, and I hope that they just keep on winning.
Full credit to Jason's niece, Elliot Jarvie. Very good stuff from us here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Take it down. Don't just settle for being in the Final Four. Have some success, and we hope for continued good reports from Jason. Thank you, sir. You can follow Jason on Twitter at Jarvie the King. Follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. If you disagree with us regarding our social media talk, if you think the Lions offense can be really productive, maybe even top 5, or if you think they're going to be really bad or horrible, feel free, message us at Detroit Podcast. We greatly appreciate it. For Jason Jarvie, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Thanks, everybody. We'll see everybody next Tuesday.
Later.
Okay, nice, idiot. You. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.